Hello and welcome to the Calling the Real You podcast. I'm your host, Pamella Horton, and I call the real you out each and every week with special guests like the one that we have today. Today we're talking with Kim Serafini, and we're going to be discussing harnessing the power of the mind. So Kim, please welcome to the Calling the Real You podcast.
Hello, my dear Pamela. For everybody who's listening, it is such an honor to be here. And I have to tell you, there are very few people on my life's journey I've come across who are as exquisite in their soul and as bright in their minds as Pamela, and indeed her husband, Eric. They're an absolute delight to be around. She is an exceptional role model for me, and she makes working together so graceful and so lovely. So really and truly, this is a wonderful opportunity for me. I love the super success she's achieving with her podcast, and she has lots of famous guests, and I was like, wow, you're asking me, you cute little thing. That's so sweet.
It's about time. I think I've asked multiple times and we're finally here. It really is. I've been looking forward to this day because, as you know, I believe in what it is that you're doing and I believe what you've achieved. And it's really incredible the relationships that you've been able to develop to make all of this happen. And so thank you, first of all, for your kind words. I love you. You know that. And it really is just, you mentioned that I'm a role model for you, Kim. I challenge you because you're just as much of a role model for me. And all of you are in for such a treat to learn from Kim and to experience really her magic.
Oh, you're a sweetheart, truly.
Kim, you really have had an incredible career. I mean, you've jet setted around the world. You were the quintessential high class boss lady, if you will, and you now own this incredible corporation, quite frankly, that is literally changing people's lives. What's your story? How is it that you came to be where you are today?
We need about 3 to 30 hours for that, but I'll give you the summary in compression. So I grew up in Papua New Guinea, which is an exotic paradise on the equator, north of Australia, on the other side of Indonesia, halfway between there and, say, Hawaii. And the landscape looks very much like French Polynesia, Tahiti. It's absolutely spectacular and stunning. The turquoise blue, the palm trees, and the people of Papua New Guinea look very much like the very happy, fuzzy-wuzzy angels, as the American Army used to call them when they went there to the Pacific. But quite frankly, they look like Fijians. And so here's a very, very short story. My grandparents on my father's side were outstanding, very adventurous, courageous, innovative entrepreneurs from Italy. And that family business involved my father and his brothers and their families. And of course, that's where I grew up. And so I have an extremely interesting perspective on life. I understand that heaven is on earth. I grew up, right, quite frankly, in God's backyard. That's how beautiful it was. But it was also striking in the contrast to what we imagine in the West. Interestingly enough, I was a minority as a little white girl, very much the minority in this expatriate community. And I just want to fast forward because now I'm one of the world's leading specialists in positive priming, which is a state of being our best. And interestingly enough, when we are positively primed as human beings, and this has been studied so very well at such fine institutions, lots of universities are doing these miraculous research programs in neuroscience and positive psychology. And we're now understanding that as positively primed human beings, we are much more energetic, we're more creative, we're more innovative, we're much more efficient and effective, and we actually have it's not just a preoccupation, but we have an appreciation of unity and oneness and the interrelated dynamic nature of life itself and all of us. And so what I kind of want to say is that some of that positive psychology neuroscience research studies findings is actually what we now apply in what we do. Why I tell you that is because in that expatriate community, I saw lots of socializing, and it's now very well known that charismatic relationships that are magnetic and self-fulfilling and rewarding and rich, they are the nectar, the nutrition that we all need. So there are all sorts of correlations between good, healthy relationships and a large quantity of them, great social connections, and our ability to be very resilient to life's bumps and knocks and grazes, the curveball that hits us when we least expect it, whether that's all of the big D's, disease and debt and divorce and so forth. The reality is that life does have a way of showing us what our lessons are to learn at the most inopportune times when we least want it or need it. But that's just not the way that life works. So what they've found out of this research is that the quality and quantity of our social connections are pivotal to our thriving. And in fact, it's one of the ingredients for resilience. So as Pamela alluded to, I actually was a change management consultant. So that was after I followed the traditional pathway. I was a fantastic student at a prestigious ladies' college, a boarding school for girls in Australia. That's actually where most of the Papua New Guinean expatriate Western communities' children went to boarding school, and that was Australia. But luckily for me, my family actually moved to Australia so that I didn't have to board. So I was a day girl, as they call it. I then went to an exceptional university. Here in Australia, we don't really have the Ivy League system, but we have a sister university to Duke University in the United States, and it's called Bond, B-O-N-D. So Bond University was where I went to business school. I graduated. I always wanted to live in the big wide world, and I thought that the world was my oyster. I'd been led to believe that anything was possible. And I definitely saw this spiritedness from my grandparents and my parents. And I was in admiration for the kinds of lives that you could create living in an exceptionally unique environment, a really distinctively different environment to that which we understand in the West. How do you actually create a life in those kinds of far-flung places? Now, this is, of course, in the 60s and 70s. So anyway, I went to London and spent many years there, New York. I did a year in Paris. And ultimately, I think that I had the travel bug because my parents instilled in me this understanding that we could learn so much from different cultures. And it does influence and impact us in an amazing way. And we actually grow and develop and expand our horizons as well as our perspectives. So I ended up specializing in change management consultant because I got this incredible opportunity when I first arrived in London, working from midnight to 8 a.m. because that's when they paid the most per hour. And I was a struggling Aussie, or the English call them Antipodeans. And here I was dossing, as they call it, sleeping on people's couches until I could afford to have my own place. Fascinatingly enough, I found myself in the right place at the right time with the right chances to take and the right mentors. And they guided me. And I bumped into some really wonderful people who encouraged me to understand my potential and the possibilities and to develop that. And I went off and did the Anthony Robbins Life Mastery University program. And what I was learning from organizational psychologists about people and why we will change and why we can't and won't and don't change, even when, for example, you know that you should save 10% of your income every week or every month, and you should actually allow that to grow and have compound interest work in your favor. I guarantee if you're anything like me, you heard really great advice, lots of awesome suggestions, but quite frankly, your other than consciousness, your subconsciousness resisted all of that really delicious goodness, what was going to be really good for your financial freedom, because there's a part of you that is biological. It's it's our physiology and the way that we were formed as human beings, and we really and truly, we don't like that which is uncertain or ambiguous or unknown to us or unfamiliar, and we reject it or we resist it. And that's simply because when we were basically cave people, when we had to make a quick decision about whether an intruder, a giant dinosaur-like thing, was going to attack us and kill us, we had to know whether we had to run or whether we had to fight. So that fight or flight mode is actually one of the strongest impulses that we have. And interestingly enough, when we don't know what something's going to mean, ultimately, we automatically judge it to be dangerous, to be something that we should run from or fight. And so let's just say you've been told that you should drink 8 glasses of water or a couple of liters of water a day. Quite frankly, if you don't know what that feels like on the other side where the grass is greener, you're going to reject that information because simply it's unfamiliar and you're insecure about it. And that's because you're a human being. So it's not your fault that you actually reject those suggestions to cut sugar out of your diet or to do some more exercise. Like anything that isn't a familiar way of being for you, you are naturally, automatically, organically inclined to resist or reject. And then let's layer on top conditioning as children from society and culture and our parents and the schooling system long before we ever think about going to university and creating our own thought ideas. So I became incredibly engrossed, completely curious about why people do what they will do and will not do what they know that they should do. Now, certainly in my 20s, whilst I was living this corporate life, that meant things like going to sleep and getting a good 8 hours or 7 to 10 hours a night. I mean, quite frankly, I burnt the candle at both ends rather significantly. I thought that I was going to live forever and I was going to earn a fortune forever as a consultant. So I didn't save my money. I spent it. And I loved my Giorgio Armani suits and my Gucci shoes and my fast lifestyle. And quite frankly, I'd been told to be more sensible and more responsible, but I didn't understand what sensible and responsible actually meant. So it was a very fascinating conundrum that I faced. And then, of course, life just knocked me around. I actually decided to leave the corporate world. I went back to study sports therapy. And ultimately, there's another extremely long part of this story where I ended up inventing what is now commonly known as hot stone massage as a spa treatment for the health and well-being retreats. And it's actually called lithos therapy. And I trained over 5,000 therapists and set up distributorships in Dubai and in India and in other parts of Australia, New Zealand, Asia, etc. And interestingly enough, that journey is what introduced me to the Hindu concept of all is one and one is all while I was teaching some Ayurvedic doctors and therapists in the Himalayas, as they call them, in northern India. And that moment in my life totally, completely and utterly transfixed me, transformed me, and totally and completely and utterly drove me in a completely new direction. So I wrote a couple of books about gratitude, in particular the physiological outcomes of gratitude as a positive emotion was what was captivating me, and I was teaching it. Remember, I was already teaching lots of therapists, so we were actually diving into how do our emotions actually translate into impacts within our endocrine system. So there are emotions that we now know actually do produce certain types of hormones. And we know that those messages derive out of areas in your brain that get messages from something called your mirror neurons. And your mirror neurons are influenced by what you see and the way that your retina actually processes what you see. And so I essentially synthesized about 20 years of understanding something that is now called the broaden and build theory and my experiences in the spa industry to derive a tool, a resource that actually helps us to activate those mirror neurons in a way that's helpful and beneficial and allows for vibrancy and allows us to process the vitamins and minerals that bizarrely images actually produce within your body. So I just want to repeat what I said so that you get this. When you look at a photograph of tree canopy and your eyes actually see that, your retina processes it, it sends a message to your mirror neurons, and then you actually start to have your brain activated in such a way that it sends messages to your endocrine system. You start to produce more hormones. And in particular, with tree canopy, you're actually going to start to produce this experience in your body of awe or wonderment, or it's so beautiful and it's captivating, it's alluring. And when you experience those moments of awe where something spectacular and it captures your imagination, what happens is you produce more cytokines, and that's a protein that we now know is involved in your immune system. Now, I could actually do 5-minute vignettes on all sorts of different things. So there are images of spectacular sunsets or mountainscapes, sceneries. They actually impact you in a particular type of way. There are images of certain types of smiles that impact you in a certain kind of way. For example, a Duchenne smile will have your body producing more serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin, and they're neurotransmitters, and your brain will literally fire much more easily and quickly. And you build this part of your brain that's responsible for solutions-oriented thinking and imagination and creative ways to actually deal with issues. It's absolutely remarkable, truly remarkable. So does that give you a tiny little bit of an idea? And then do you want me to tell you what actually brought me to my knees and had me create the very first tool that I thought would actually work on me?
Yes. I want to just, I do. I want to just stop here. I want to, first of all, I need to acknowledge and just say out loud, all of you, are you getting this? Because, and do you understand why I say that and truly mean that Kim is absolutely brilliant? And I think that if we could just encapsulate everything that you just said, just to kind of, because there's a lot of scientific terms in there, and I really want people to truly understand this. So in terms of the subconscious mind and the neurons firing up, if you could just kind of one quick sentence just kind of encapsulate everything just in a generic so that everyone really can get it.
Okay, so there is a precise formula for what you should see that will actually cause your body and mind to work in a much more miraculous way that is beneficial and advantageous and healthy, and quite frankly, puts you in a state of being that allows you to be your best, but more importantly, it's what precedes your ability to be successful.
Thank you. It's, you mentioned positively priming your mind earlier. It's real. Another analogy is positively or priming the pump. When back in the day when you had to actually pump the water up from the well, you had to positively charge that. They had to pump it up, and that's what we're doing with our brains with this tool. So please, what brought you to your knees?
Life and living long enough. So I think that many years ago, I had a thought, and that was maybe I saw Anthony Robbins on stage, or maybe I watched the movie The Secret, or What the Bleep Do We Know? And there was this fleeting moment where I said, wow, I'd love to be able to be a positive influence in other people's lives and make a profound contribution with my life to millions of people's lives. I wonder what that would feel like. And quite frankly, I now get to know. But the journey between here and there had lots of ups and downs. And I believe that in some way, shape, or form, my angels, or that higher self, that more pure part of me that is integrated, quite frankly, with the shadow part of me, it knew that I had to experience more before I had any credibility, or before there was integrity in my young life or my youthfulness in being able to advise or suggest or counsel or coach or mentor others, right? So I think that there was this desire I launched to experience so much of life so that I could actually connect in a much more deeper way that was more sincere and genuine. What do I mean by that? Well, I'd always been very slim and very fit and healthy. And then all of a sudden, I started to put on a lot of weight. And I realized that I needed to experience that so I could understand what it was like for people who, quite frankly, had never even experienced what it's like to be slim and fit and healthy. And when I was much more slim, much more fit, and much healthier, and quite frankly, much more youthful, I was younger also in age, chronological age, I had some judgments around people who weren't slim and fit. I didn't understand that it could be hormones, it could be a disease, it could be emotional pain, it could be about 1,000 other things, right? So funnily enough, I didn't know what it was like to ever not have the ability to earn a fortune. And I went through a stage where I'd built up my spa industry business so incredibly well, and I expanded into 2 other types of businesses in distributing skincare and teeth whitening products and cosmetics, and it was disastrous, absolutely disastrous financially. And I'd never even known how you could be in a place where you couldn't even buy yourself a cup of coffee. And so I got to experience that, I think, so that I could actually relate to people who struggle financially, who don't know how they're actually going to make their bills, because I was in that place. Now, thank goodness I'd done so much reading in terms of psychology or self-improvement and personal development, and I was very interested in biographies. So I'd read lots of biographies, whether that was Richard Branson's and so forth, because I was fascinated in what actually allows somebody to perform at their peak. And many, many, many years ago, I had some glimpses of that. I was an elite athlete. I was a very, very successful swimmer. That's a big deal in Australia. My brother was a rower in terms of sitting in the stroke position in the boat of 8 and rowing in the Australian Youth 8. I was actually in a long-term committed romantic relationship with an Olympian, and I used to wonder what on earth makes him not only want to be the best in the city or the best in the region or the best in the state or the best in the country or the best in the South Pacific or the best in Asia or the best in the Commonwealth or the best in the Olympics, but the best in the world? Like, who do you need to want to be the best in the world at a really competitive sport where the Olympics absolutely does represent the most number of countries, but quite frankly, the world championships in most of these outstanding sports actually represents even more countries. And so I think that I developed this desire to know, and a curiosity and an inquisitiveness. And I'm relatively sharp and I devour the information, but I am really quite introverted. So I really think through what it is that I'm learning. And there is this part of me that was introduced probably from either my father or my family origins of a little bit of skepticism and a little bit of cynicism and a little bit of testing that which we hear so we know whether it actually resonates and is the truth for us. And so what happened was that I started to face my own health crises. I started to face my own financial crises. And then I started to face the reality that I had to have been the common denominator that meant in my late 30s, I arrived at having never gotten married or had children. And so I started to think, why is it that my romantic relationships don't last or don't work, or when they end, they're so painful? And that made me really want to know much more about how do we create a life we truly love. How do we actually create a life we truly love and love the life we're truly living? Whether that's being more humble, whether that's being more realistic, whether that's actually learning to be in the now, just surrendering. And you know what the funny thing is that I ended up learning that I am truly capable of creating miracles. and I am a child of God, and my playing small does not serve the world. So I used to read that Marianne Williamson poem over and over and over again. And I used to read that beautiful poem from Oriah, The Invitation, stand at the edge of the lake and shout to the silver of the moon, yes. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't find yourself in a little ball in the fetal position, bawling your eyes out, absolutely, completely and utterly frustrated with yourself because, quite frankly, something didn't go your way, or, God forbid, there is a drama in the very thing that you love, which might be your business, and you just cannot seem to be able to find the solution in that moment. And that's where resilience matters. That's where grit and determination and tenacity matters. And fascinatingly enough, or funnily enough, I believe that what most people recognize in me and us as a team is resilience and perseverance and persistence and faith and determination. And that is because we are powered by this incredible mission where our purpose is to actually help you really feel a sense of freedom and peacefulness from having life be truly delicious and joyful and magnificent and spectacular and fun and fascinating and wonderful and lovely. Seriously, when you are positively primed as a human being, and it's something that you can do for yourself every single day, a couple of times a day, the outcomes is really about who are you being that allows you to be in the flow. It allows synchronicity to be absolutely an experience of your everyday life. It just is who you are, right? You create synchronicities for yourself and for others. Coincidences just delightful observations that are constant for you. You're in what David Avocado Wolf calls the holy flow. So, Pamela, I need to take a nice big deep breath.
Please do. I love your enthusiasm, Kim, and people that are listening, I hope that you really are tuning in and just understanding the sincerity and the experience that Kim is speaking with. And we're going to talk about MindPT specifically, how it can help you. But her enthusiasm is infectious. Her energy is infectious. And it is because not only of the mission that she has to uplift and elevate the world and to live in her power and her greatness, and as well as the team at MindPT, etc. We believe in the mission, but it's really because she walks her talk, and she actually practices and watches her own MindPT sessions and the sessions of those of the experts. So Kim, when you're finished, just take a nice deep breath and want to chime in again. If you could just, what exactly can somebody expect? What is MindPT?
Okay, brilliant question. I want everybody to hear this. It's an accelerated learning tool, and I'm going to explain why the learning and the cognition is accelerated, but it's a positive priming resource for you. So imagine this. You're going to open up the app and you're going to press play on a title. Now, the title is exactly like a book title or a movie title or an audio program title. And when you press play, what you're actually going to see is about 1,000 flashcards transitioning in front of your eyes. And on speed 1, it's very graceful, and you emotionally engage in this evocative experience, and you allow yourself to be positively primed, and it happens within 3 minutes. Why? Well, quite frankly, it's because of 2 significant pieces of functionality. So I want you to imagine it's something a little bit like Cliff Notes in a PowerPoint presentation that is much more sophisticated. So every single one of the 800 photographs that you'll be seeing are very carefully curated. They're precisely chosen for specific reasons. And some of it I alluded to before. There are a certain ratio of photographs that have Duchenne smiles so that you start to actually have the broaden and build effect happening in your body. But what does that mean? It means that you're thinking more clearly. There will be clarity, an improvement in clarity, clear thinking. There will be actually an improvement in the sharpness of your thinking. So it's actually much more decisive in the way that your brain works with analyzing and researching lots of different options and then coming to an understanding of what is right for you in this moment to go forward. It happens in a very different kind of way when you start to harness the way that your brain works. But much more importantly, we're impacting the mind. And I need another hour or two to explain to you that there are actually mind cells that do thinking in your heart and also in your gut. Mm-hmm. And medical scientists now know this, and there might be mind cells elsewhere. We're actually not quite sure. Could be in the tips of your finger, could be actually at your throat area, could be where, quite frankly, the Chinese believe the chakras are. And the Ayurvedic masters believe that, quite frankly, these energy systems go through. Maybe there are mind cells for consciousness and thinking there too. But that's a whole nother conversation. Medically, we know that our cardiovascular system is impacted by the thoughts that we have and the emotions that we experience. And funnily enough, they can isolate those thoughts to thoughts in the heart. All right. So let's just not go there, because seriously, we're going to dive down a rabbit hole and we don't have time for that. But when you see the images that are presented to you, know that they are healthy, they're empowering, they're enriching, they're amazing, and they're designed to actually impact your reticular activating system. So that's the part of your brain that searches out and seeks information that supports you in your goals and in the way that you're living your life, so that you're actually in alignment for your actions and your behaviors and your habits. It's a very, very complex, complicated system. Just know that it's happening automatically, effortlessly, gracefully, beautifully, and quickly for you. Mm-hmm. This brings about rapid transformation. Now, the function of speeding it up from speed 1 through to speed 10. At speed 10, we're bypassing the conscious critical judgment factors of the prefrontal cortex that are usually preventing anything that is new or interesting that, quite frankly, your brain would have ordinarily before seen as uncertain, and you then would have been insecure about it and resist it. So we actually bypass that with speed. So watching a MindPT session on speed 7, 8, 9, 10 is actually fantastic for you if this is an area where you're really stuck. Now, that could be an area in terms of your abundance and your prosperity mindset, or believing that you, in fact, have the Midas touch, that there will always be enough money flowing to you abundantly, and you're really very wise with the way that you manage your money. All right, so if you've got some limiting beliefs or some irkiness around some of that, just imagine that watching a MindPT session literally erases and overrides. It's like a file save as, just file, save as, and you rewrite that. So you're rewiring these beliefs in your brain. It's absolutely extraordinary and very powerful, and it happens at speed. But there's a second aspect that's really unique to this proprietary technology, and that is every time you press play and you're connected to the Wi-Fi, the way that it interacts with our server is it reshuffles the cards. So I want you to imagine that different images are then seen with what we call different statements. So I said there are about 800 images, and there are about 200 self-fulfilling prophecies that are like mantras and affirmations that have a special formula for the way that they actually cause you to change your core beliefs and your paradigms, and the way that you're impacting you as yourself as a human being in the way that you're showing up in the world, the way you're behaving. So these particular statements, these positive statements, are phrased in an incredibly careful way, and you're going to see these words with a particular type of image, but the next time you watch it, it'll be with a different image. Now, in science, we understand this as associative thinking, and the process is very much about what we're doing with cognitive dissonance and our identity work. Now, we have all sorts of resources as for members of MindPT where you can actually learn a lot more about this, and you actually hear a lot of this teaching in different kinds of ways so that you understand exactly what's happening and why it's happening, and more to the point, how you harness it and how you benefit from it and how you leverage it. But what I can say is we have hundreds of thousands of people interested, tens of thousands of members. We've got a consumer site. We've got a professional division for therapists and coaches and speakers and authors, and we help them to express their messages in this accelerated learning format. Because what we found is that when you watch a MindPT session, let's call that a training and development program by a particular subject from a particular world-class expert like a New York Times bestselling author, when you watch a particular MindPT session, interestingly enough, after 3 minutes, you're positively primed, and that effect lasts for about 6 to 8 hours. And we had that research done, that efficacy research done to prove what we're doing, because very, 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 very interestingly, Sean Acor, one of the world's leaders in positive psychology, included MindPT in his O course with the Oprah Winfrey Network last year, and he actually had to do the evidence that actually showed the Oprah Winfrey Network that MindPT is a tool for positive priming. So we were very lucky, like so fortunate and blessed, I can't tell you.
Quickly, you have it. We MindPT have an event coming up starting February 1st, and that's today. That's when this interview will be airing. And tell us a little bit about that before you go.
Oh, wow. Okay, so imagine gathering some of the world's giants in academia and scholarship with respect to medical, positive psychology and neuroscience, and some other giants in spirituality. Like, we're talking truly famous celebrities in their own fields. People like Rika Zimmerman and Marissa Peer and David Avocado Wolf and Professor Stephen G. Post. I mean, quite frankly, imagine that you could come to an event for free, and every single day you get to choose to listen to short presentations via webinar where you get to watch their MindPT session whilst they're talking about what they truly believe is necessary to be our best. There are tips, there are hints, there are suggestions, there are these gorgeous gems in terms of wisdom and ideas. I am so excited. We've got tens of thousands of people who've actually registered. And what I'm going to encourage you to do is go out there and share with every single person that you know to register at beingoutbest.com, because every single one of our days, and there are 10 days, features a range of speakers as presenters delivering these short classes. And some of them are offering gifts to the audience who listen. And those gifts, when we, collaborate and we connect and we co-create and we have community and we then share, guess what? All of a sudden, we've got over $3,000 worth of gifts available for real for our delegates. And then there are special offers if you want to take advantage of some of these programs that people are offering. So it's really a rather fabulous, truly fun, and extremely fruitful opportunity. So jump on in fast, because you don't want to miss day one. All of our speakers, of which there are over 70, are absolutely world-class, international superstars, world-renowned. So, and I'm not exaggerating by that. You can go and read their bios and go and have a look at their websites. And quite frankly, I'm so blessed, and you will feel that too. You will feel so incredibly blessed and fortunate and grateful that you had this opportunity to hear from them at this moment in time. Like, seriously. And the amount of extra energy I have, like how it's actually up-leveled my own vibration and the vibration of everybody involved with MindPT, it's because this extraordinary vortex that is being created by this collection of very unique and vastly different types of people. Like, the 70 aren't all just, fabulous when it comes to fruits and vegetables and whether we should be gluten-free and raw foodies. No. Absolutely, there is that. But there is also, and what should we do if we're into energy healing? But actually, quite frankly, what should we do if we don't even really have epistemic access to anything that is spiritual and we actually just want to dive deep into the science? Then you definitely want to listen to Amy, and you definitely want to listen to Stephen. I mean, quite frankly, there is more than enough for everybody, no matter what your endeavor is in life and what the intention is for you to manifest, for you to literally create in reality.
That's the truth. We really are an eclectic group. Kim, thank you so much for giving us your time and your energy today. It's always a pleasure to share that with you, and you really achieved something quite remarkable, and it's really a pleasure to share MindPT with my world as I've been doing so, but even in this format here on the podcast. And I wish to thank everyone who's listening. I hope you were able to really tap in and tune into Kim's heart and her message and the why behind why she created MindPT and the empowerment that MindPT can bring you.